Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you so much for tuning in today. How have you been? I noted the weather yesterday was extremely hot. But you know what? We shouldn't really complain because the winter is just around the corner and we need as much vitamin D as we can get. So try and do that and try and keep yourself warm and hydrated, of course. But thank you for tuning in. You know what? Today we are talking about a very serious topic: youth crime. As we know, youth crime in London is actually spiraling out of control. And as a parent, it's something that is very close to my heart. And I thought we'd talk about it and see how my guests can actually make parents and actually even the youth understand what goes on in the courtroom. And then maybe that can maybe deter them from actually committing the crime. But before I actually invite my guests, I just wanted to take a clip of my guests in action, and then we'll be back. Thank you so much.
On the street there's a code, but in the courtroom there's a code. And it's a code which is very much set against you when you're charged with murder and manslaughter. They don't know what happens in the courtroom. And sadly, by the time young men are seeing me, they're in real trouble. They don't know what happens in the courtroom. On the street there's a code, but in the courtroom there's a code. And it's a code which is very much set against you when you're charged with murder and manslaughter. All of the resources that the Crown Prosecution Service have, the police have, the judiciary have, is all on you. I do most of my work at the Old Bailey. It's the #1 court in the country dealing with the most serious criminal matters. I've been doing this job for 25 years. And for the first time, I'm sad to be representing predominantly young black men charged with murder and manslaughter. Hundreds of lives ruined, unfulfilled potential. There may be some notoriety in being in a famous court where many historic cases have been heard, but it comes with unspoken fear by those on trial. I get to see the young men who have all the bravado out on the street, but when they're in the courtroom, when they're down in the cells at the Old Bailey waiting to speak to me, they are trembling. They're children. Their children appearing in an adult court. They are petrified. They might not say it, but even with the young man I was representing, his hands were trembling. I said, "What's wrong?" He said, "I'm scared. You're about to go and give evidence for your life." A jury of 12 men and women selected at random and a senior judge, 12 people who don't even know you, know nothing about your circumstances, but they may judge you on the way that you speak, they may judge you on the way that you appear, they may judge you because of something they read in the paper last week, or even the same morning on their way to court about someone being stabbed. You're putting your life as a young person in those 12 people's hands. And I mean your life. They don't even understand that when you get into the courtroom, it's complex. It's not street language. It's legal principles, concepts. Things like bad character applications, where if you've been in trouble before carrying a knife, the prosecution will seek to introduce that evidence against you to say that you have a propensity to carry a weapon. Therefore, a jury can draw the inference that you're more likely to be guilty than not. Liability of secondary parties and principals. All the things about joint enterprise. If you're there and someone gets stabbed and you happen to be next to him, easy for the prosecution to say you were part and parcel of a joint enterprise to murder X. The same scenario of the case I did. 2 people, 1 person.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much, and thank you for coming back. I hope with that short clip that you've watched, you've got a rough idea of what my guest does. And I'm going to introduce him. He's called Stephen Akinsanya. He's a barrister at Great James Street Chambers. He has over 25 years experience. Stephen is a barrister with a modern approach to independent practice. He appears in many complex and serious criminal cases, and also led a number of high-profile criminal cases from Central Court to Supreme Court. So we are talking to a man who has a lot of experience, a lot of knowledge, and a lot of tools and tips as well to help we as parents and you, the youth, to actually get away from the wrong path and into the right path. So help me and welcome Barrister Stephen.
Thank you so much.
How are you?
Fine, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. You are most welcome, and thank you for taking the time.
No, you're welcome.
I know you are a very busy man.
Not too busy for this topic. No.
And this is a topic that is very close to my heart.
Yes, on mine
You know,
too.
recently, we had a knife crime in Pearly.
Yes, you wouldn't believe that same day I met with my local pastor in Purley to deliver a talk about knife crime, and he welcomed it, but said, "Well, nothing really happens around here." And that very evening, a young man
Something
was
happened,
murdered on
yeah.
Purley High Street.
It was a shock to the
Oh,
community.
it was
It
indeed
was a complete, because it was so close to home.
very close to home.
But you know what, Stephen, as a parent of boys, it's difficult.
It is
It is challenging.
very.
But I believe we shouldn't get put off or scared of
No.
talking about it. I think the more we talk about and raise awareness of what is going on in the street. And today I want you to share it is like in the courtroom when you're defending the youth.
Yeah.
How do they portray themselves?
Well, there's still that bravado when the case starts. There's still some messing around, not taking it seriously. But the minute the case starts, the jury is sworn in and witnesses start giving evidence. And of course, that crucial moment when they themselves have to stand up and give evidence in their own defense if they choose to, that's when you see the nerves. That's when you see the issue, the fact that these are young people, children, really.
So we are talking mainly about knife crime here.
Yes, knife and gun crime.
Knife and gun crime.
Yeah, yeah, and you actually see them for what they are, teenagers who are petrified, who are fearful of their future because they know if they are convicted, that's their life effectively over.
And what age group are we talking about here?
Sadly, we're talking of children as young as 12,
12 years
all
old.
the way up to 20, 23, 24, yes.
And would you say that you mainly represent black boys in court, or is it a diverse?
Sadly, to say it's young black men.
And
Yes.
have you seen a rise within the last maybe 2 years, or is it 3 years?
Yes. I often comment that when I first started out, I didn't really represent many young black boys, but now there has been a significant increase in the last 10 years.
And how many convictions do you get?
Quite a few.
Quite a few.
I mean, I've been fortunate in that many of the young men I've represented recently have been acquitted, but many of them are convicted. Many. Because often these cases have as many as 4 or 5, even up to 6 young men on trial.
Okay.
So usually convictions will result in 5 or 6 lives being ruined, as well as the young man who died.
Yeah. And would you say that most of the boys that are actually committing this crime are in a gang?
Well, the problem is that they're not actually gangs per se. They're loosely called gangs because of this loose connection of friends who associate together. And it's easy
it's
to
guilty
label.
by association.
Yes, it's easy to label everyone as being in a gang, but not all of them are in gangs. No.
Okay.
It's just yeah.
And would you say that probably being in the wrong place at the wrong time?
That's a factor because obviously when something happens and you're in the wrong place at the wrong time, someone produces a knife, someone is fatally stabbed, you're swept up in all that follows. And you could be an innocent bystander, you could know nothing about it, but there's almost a guilt by association that follows.
And because now the children are on holidays, and we're going to be seeing a lot of children hanging around on the streets.
Yeah.
Because sadly, the government has closed a lot of youth centers, so they don't have anywhere to go.
Yeah.
And the parents that cannot afford to take their children on holidays, they have to find a way of how to actually even entertain the children.
Yes.
What advice would you give the youth?
It's difficult because obviously the tendency is to want to hang out with your friends. But I would say try and be constructive with your time. Try and find something to do. There are numerous organisations who run various camps and programs where you can actually of London. Go and do some orienteering. Go and do something different. Go and meet new people. They're going to teach you life skills. My own children are away doing it right now because I know that the devil finds work for idle hands.
Oh, absolutely, for idle hands.
And
he
so
does.
if you're not engaged doing something, the tendency is to waste your time or associate with people who will attract bad things happening.
And when you're representing the youth in the court, do they appear remorseful?
At the point when the reality of what they're involved in hits them, then there is some remorse, but it's still not full remorse because they haven't processed it. And this is the real worrying thing, that there's no value for life, but you can take someone's life who's of the same age of you roughly, and
And for
not
very
even
petty reasons, isn't it?
yes, for ridiculous reasons,
What
and
are
not
some of
even
the
feel
reasons?
it. Postcode wars, arguing over territory. Um, you've got people who get involved in it because someone's been disrespected, over girls.
Dressing up as well,
Yes,
certain way,
yes.
or even the kind of slangs you use, probably.
Well, I mean, that all comes with being a young person in this youth culture, but it just seems that people are ready to lose their temper so quickly and resort to violence without even
A
wanting to
thought.
mediate or think about what you're doing or even to have a dialogue. It's just, it's gone.
Have you met any of the youth that have been convicted and are now released?
A
Or have you
couple,
visited any of them in prison? What do they tell you?
overwhelmingly, that they're remorseful now and they wish they could have the time back again.
And
Because
how many times are we talking about their sentencing?
how many?
The sentencing. How long do they normally go in for, depending
Well,
on
this
the
is
case?
years. So if for murder and manslaughter, anything from 15 years upwards.
You are kidding me.
No. And what they realize is that when you're operating at that level in terms of criminal behavior, the sentences that are being imposed are severe, and you're not just doing half of your sentence.
You're doing a full
You're doing
sentence
the full 15
with
years.
no parole.
Well, at the end of the 15 years, then the parole board will consider whether you should be released or not,
And on good behavior, probably as well.
potentially. But you're putting your life in somebody else's hands. You can
And then,
decide whether or not you're released.
and then you know what I'm also thinking about? Okay, you're spending 15 years of your life. Somebody, say, for example, 15 years old. You're going in for 15 years. By the time you come out, you're almost 40.
Yes, you go in as a teenager, you come out as a middle-aged man almost. The world has changed.
The world has changed. The world has moved on.
And your friends have moved on. Those same people who profess to be your brethren and your friends on the street, they're not going to visit you for 15
No,
years.
not at all.
That girlfriend won't wait. All the things that you thought you had in terms of that family with those people you associated, they will all desert you. And often, I'm told, the only person who is still there for them at the end of the sentence is the one who gave them life, their mothers.
Yeah, mothers, yeah, that's all we can do, isn't it? Now, the thing is, when somebody commits a crime, what kind of job opportunities do they have?
Limited. Because once you have a conviction and a conviction for violence, then of course employers are less likely to want to employ you. So you already reduce your opportunities of work. So you're already at a disadvantage, perhaps, even before you've committed the crime, because you maybe have not finished your formal education, you don't have qualifications. But by the time you come out as a 30-year-old, 40-year-old man, you may have gained some qualifications whilst you've been in
But
custody.
it might not even be applicable.
No.
Yeah.
There's
You
the
might have
work
to go
there.
back to the education system again
Yes,
and
yeah.
start all over again.
Yeah.
So what kind of, say for example, somebody wanted to be a lawyer
Mm-hmm.
and maybe committed a petty crime but wasn't sentenced, would they still be able to become a lawyer?
As long as they declared it in their application to become a lawyer, then of course the relevant bodies would consider the application with full knowledge of your past. And I always say to people, look, it's better to declare your past rather than hide it, because if
Yeah.
it's found after the event, then you're almost certainly not going to progress.
Of course, yeah, of course. Now, for example, a youth who is maybe in uni at the moment, or maybe going into uni, okay, and character-wise, what would you tell them?
Try and have an impeccable character as possible, because that is what you're judged by, certainly in the profession.
You know, there's a program actually going to be aired on BBC One. I saw the advert today on BBC Two on Monday at 9 o'clock, and they were talking about how to. I can't remember the topic actually, but how it's not actually your qualification, but it's who you know. They were actually showing an Asian guy who went to the top universities, but because of his background, he cannot actually get any jobs. He's applied for so many jobs, and his other friends, other races, have managed to get jobs, and they can't. He can't get a job. And this is something that the youth actually don't look into, isn't it? They don't think about their future.
No. And obviously with the power of social media, People also have to be careful what they post on social media, because often employers look at social media
Yeah.
before they employ you, and if they see maybe those who you associate with or things you've done, then of course that may be a factor.
You call into character, isn't it?
Yes, yes. So that's the power of social media, in a negative way, because sometimes people are not thinking about who has access to this material.
That's very true. So we are talking about whatever profession you're going into.
Yeah,
It doesn't have to be really
doesn't
a lawyer.
have to be law. I know many people who've applied for jobs with banks and various companies,
Even the police,
in the city,
probably,
in the
yeah.
police, and they will look at social media. I know people whose applications have been unsuccessful because the potential employer has seen something which has turned them off.
And what kind of posting are we talking about?
Bad behaviour, maybe things they've expressed in a social media, on Facebook, language or things politically, things that they've said, which they later want to retract, but that sort of thing.
It's too late, yeah. We're just going to take a short break and we will be back. Go grab yourself a cup of tea and we'll be back. Thank you so much.
Stabs causes the fatal wound, but 2 people are on trial for murder. Joint enterprise. Anonymous witnesses, people who come forward who are perhaps too scared to be named, but the court process allows them to give evidence from behind a screen where you don't even get to see them. Assisting and encouragement of the principal. All of these legal concepts that they use cell site analysis so they can track your phone to see where you were in the moments before someone was murdered, to say you must have been with these people because you were with them an hour before. These young people have no idea. Unanimous majority verdicts. 12 people get to.
Thank you so much for coming back. I hope you've called a few friends to watch. And if not, if at all you've missed any part of this program, I will be uploading it on my YouTube channel later on. And we are also going to do a pre-record later on. And we'll air it at an agreed time. Okay, and I'll let you know, of course. Now we're just going to focus on mainly on what actually goes on in the courtroom.
Yeah, and this is something I'm really passionate about, because certainly by the time you're seeing a lawyer like me, and you're really in trouble. And a lot of young people don't understand the serious business that goes on in a Crown Court, particularly the Old Bailey, which is an intimidating court for everybody. Even the lawyers sometimes are in awe of it and the history. And young people don't understand that if you're appearing there, charged with a serious offence, you're coming up against the full might of the criminal justice system. The CPS have all the resources necessary to prosecute a case. They have the best lawyers who prosecute the case. And if you have medium or no education, yet you are expected to stand up in a courtroom to defend yourself, you have a lawyer, but he can't tell you what to say. He can't give your account to the 12 people who are going to listen to your account and decide whether on the evidence you are involved. And so for me, it's very important that young people understand that if you're going to choose this lifestyle, for whatever reason, you better understand what's waiting for you,
The impact.
and what can happen, and the kind of sentences that are imposed, and how your life is literally ruined.
And also being able to actually present yourself as well, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because like you said, you cannot give an account in court for them. You can represent them, but at the end of the day, they have to actually tell their story in court.
Yes, and many of the young men I've represented, you can see them physically shaking.
Shaking.
Because they know that this is their one moment to stand up in that witness box with all the eyes on you, the jury, the deceased family, the judge, the prosecutor, everyone listening to your every word. And
the cross-examination as well.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and it can be brutal.
And of course, they don't prepare you for the cross-examination.
No, because you have a rough idea of the questions that you're going to be asked, but not specifically what you're going to be asked and how they're asked, and the relentless pressure of the questions. And if you haven't got the ability to articulate yourself properly, then you're at a disadvantage.
You know what? Just hearing Barrister Stephen talking about what it feels like to be in a courtroom sends shivers down my spine. Now, I'm talking to every youth out there. You might not know what you're doing, but I'm begging you. If you do not love yourself enough to throw away that knife, if you do not love yourself enough to actually disassociate yourself from the group that you're in, then think again. Because you know, life out there is really rough. And you want a perfect future. You are the future of tomorrow. If you already have a criminal record, there are certain jobs that you cannot actually apply for. You have already tarnished yourself and painted yourself with a very bad brush that is going to take a little work. Imagine being sentenced at the age of 15 and coming out when you're 40. What does it feel like? And what kind of impact do you think you're actually leaving on your parents? Try and have the fear of authority in you. Have the fear of God in you and have the fear of life in you. Barrister Stephen, you know what? As a parent, it worries me. Because I myself, I believe if I'm to go to court, actually, I will not even be able to articulate myself to the judges, to present myself fully to the judges. Now, I want you to look into that camera and really speak to the youth and speak to the parents as well.
Well, I often say that in that moment when a mother gave birth to that child and there was jubilation and excitement, everyone celebrating the birth of that child. Fast forward 17 or 18 years later, where everybody's gathered by the graveside, putting that child in the ground. A life that hasn't even been fulfilled. A career never fulfilled. Holidays never taken. That is the sad reality of this endemic of knife crime. The deceased losing their life needlessly, the perpetrators losing their life needlessly, and also the number of people who were affected. It's not just you. Your mother, your father, if he's around, your loved ones, your siblings, your aunts, your uncles, all of those people are impacted by an action to take somebody's life. And you ruin all that you could have been for the sake of a moment's madness. And people like me have to try and save you in the criminal justice system from many, many years in prison, where you're putting your life in somebody else's hands as to when you wake up, when you have social, when you're allowed to go out of your cell. What kind of career are you going to have when you come out, if you can even get a career? The children you maybe are not going to be able to have. All of these things are the realities of making a decision to carry a knife or use a gun. And I'm just begging young people to think and think again. And if you need help to extricate yourself from a gang, or there's things that are going on, there are professionals out there who can help you get out of the situation you're in and show you a different way of living. Because your life is so important, not just to you. If you really value your life, it's important. And I cannot believe that the brevity of life for a youth means that it ends when they're 17 or 18.
It shouldn't end. It shouldn't really end when you're just beginning life. It shouldn't end when you're 17. And please, parents, I know sometimes we have to work to put food on the table. But take time. Take time and know who and what your children are doing, who their friends are, and don't just let them just go and hang around with anyone. Consciously and intentionally be there for your children, because one mistake will lead them into jail. And that is something we want to try and avoid. See, if anyone wants to get in touch with you, how can they get in touch with you, please?
The best place to reach me is at Great James Street Chambers, where I practice from. And I'm visible on the internet, so people will be able to find me.
Okay, and please, I know you're a mentor as well.
Yes, yeah. Mentoring for me is key, because there are many children who are unfortunately not in a nuclear family, or where they have that family structure and support, which is crucial to this issue. But even if they're not, all of us, it's incumbent on all of us to do something to help a child. And I know mentoring works from the numerous examples that I've been involved in of young people's lives who I've watched them from 11 or 12 to now successful men and women. It works.
And if someone wants to be mentored by you, can they get in touch with you as well, or is there
not just me, but there are numerous groups and organizations that I can put them in touch with who run mentoring programs. And this is the big drive now for mentorship, because when children have people telling them, you can be that person,
Yes.
there is a different way of living, then they'll start to think differently.
Yes.
But if you don't have those people around you, the street will become
The
your
street
friend.
will become your friend. So parents of young ones, if you want your child to be mentored, please do get in touch with Stephen, who will be able to direct you to the right people. And just be careful. Isn't it, Stephen?
Yes, every day.
Throw away that knife. It is not worth it. Don't throw away your future. Do unto others what you want them to do unto you.
And you know, I have a saying which I came across from George Eliot, and he said, and I says, what I told my client who was acquitted of murder, it's not too late to be the person you might have been.
You hear that? Repeat it again, please.
It's not too late to be the person you might have been.
It's never too late. You can still turn your life around if you're serious about it. Parents, please do speak to your children and just be there for your children so that they can grow up to be the mighty men of valor that they were born to be. And we can be proud of them in the society because we need a lot of black men. Stephen, Barrister Stephen here is a role model that all the black boys can actually look up to and aspire to be a lawyer or a barrister, but you cannot become that if you already have a criminal record. So until next time, thank you so much for tuning in, and God bless you. Bye-bye.